$22 million vanished almost overnight. Not through fraud, not through recklessness, but through a decision that, on paper, looked like total defeat. In the late 1990s, a young entrepreneur named Elon Musk watched his first real company get taken away from him. Not slowly, not gently, but decisively. He was removed as CEO, sidelined by investors, and left with cash, but no control. Most people would call that a loss. But the numbers tell a different story. Because that $22 million exit did not make Elon Musk poorer. It rewired him. It altered his psychology around risk, control, and leverage in ways that would later define PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla, and arguably the modern tech economy itself. This was not the story of a genius who never failed. This was the story of a man who failed early, then engineered his entire future to ensure it never happened again. To understand this trade, we must go back to a time when Musk was not a global icon, but an immigrant sleeping on office floors, betting everything on a single idea. Welcome to the breakdown of Elon Musk's first failure cost him $22 million. Here's why it made him richer. In 1995, Silicon Valley was not yet the mythological gold rush we imagine today. The internet existed, but its business models were unproven. Most people still viewed it as a novelty, a digital library, not a platform for wealth creation. Elon Musk had just arrived from Canada. He was 24 years old. He had dropped out of a PhD program at Stanford after just 2 days. Not because he disliked academia, but because he believed something far more dangerous. That the internet would reshape the economy faster than institutions could react. This belief was not consensus. It was contrarian. And it immediately put Musk on a collision course with risk. Along with his brother Kimball, Musk founded a company that would later be known as Zip2. Its mission sounds almost mundane today: help newspapers get online, provide maps, directories, and city guides for local businesses. But in 1995, this was revolutionary. Here's the key detail most people miss. Zip2 was not glamorous. It was infrastructure. And infrastructure businesses require two things Musk did not yet fully understand: patience, power dynamics with capital. In the early days, Musk coded relentlessly. He slept in the office. He showered at the YMCA. He lived inside the product. But as Zip2 grew, something else grew with it: venture capital interest. And with venture capital comes dilution, governance, boards, votes. This is where the first crack appeared. By 1998, Zip2 was no longer a scrappy startup. It had real clients, major newspapers. It had revenue. And it had attracted serious investors. This is where the story turns uncomfortable. Because the investors did not want Elon Musk as CEO. They wanted experience, predictability, someone who could work well with others. To the board, Musk was brilliant, but volatile, intense, uncompromising. So they did what boards do. They removed him. Not fired, technically, but sidelined. Reduced to a technical role while a professional CEO was installed above him. This moment matters more than any product decision Musk ever made. Because for the first time, he learned a brutal lesson about capitalism. Ownership matters more than effort. Control matters more than vision. Zip2 was eventually sold to Compaq in 1999 for roughly $307 million. Musk walked away with about $22 million. On paper, this was a massive win. A life-changing sum for a 28-year-old. But psychologically, this implies a terrifying reality. Musk had created something valuable and still lost command of it. And that kind of failure does not leave scars on your bank account. It rewires your operating system. Most people, after a $22 million payday, would optimize for comfort. Musk did the opposite. He reinvested almost all of it. Not because he was reckless, but because he was correcting for a flaw he had identified in himself and in the system. He founded X.com, which would later become PayPal. But this time, the structure was different. Musk obsessed over a voting rights, a board composition, a capital leverage, a decision authority. He was no longer just building products. He was engineering control. And when he was once again removed as CEO, this time from PayPal, the difference was subtle but critical. He still owned enough of the company to benefit massively from its $1.5 billion sale to eBay. The lesson had been internalized. Failure had taught him how to survive success. From this point forward, Musk's career followed a consistent, almost obsessive pattern. Take extreme personal risk. Retain maximum ownership. Operate in industries with high barriers to entry. Accept short-term losses to preserve long-term control. This pattern explains decisions that baffle the public. Investing his entire PayPal fortune into SpaceX and Tesla. And nearly going bankrupt in 2008. And refusing to dilute control even under immense pressure. Zip2 taught him that wealth without leverage is fragile. And that insight shaped everything. If you believe that failure is not the opposite of success, but its tuition, hit the like button. That click is not for the algorithm. It's a vote that you understand how real empires are built. But this was only the beginning. Because Zip2 did not just teach Musk about control. It taught him something far more dangerous. That losing everything once makes you fearless the second time. And that realization would push him toward risks no rational founder would ever take. By the early 2000s, something fundamental had shifted inside Elon Musk. Not confidence. Not ambition. Fear. Zip2 had already taken away the one thing founders fear most, control. And Musk survived it. He emerged wealthier, yes, but more importantly, inoculated. This is where the psychology becomes critical. When people talk about Musk's risk tolerance, they usually mean his willingness to gamble money. But that is a shallow interpretation. The real transformation was deeper. He had learned that the worst-case scenario was survivable. And once you internalize that truth, your decision-making framework changes permanently. This explains what happened next. After PayPal's sale, Musk walked away with roughly $180 million. This time, the world was watching. The rational play would have been diversification. Hedge funds. Real estate. Quiet board seats. Instead, Musk did something that still looks irrational in hindsight. He concentrated. He poured nearly all of his liquid wealth into two industries that were notorious capital incinerators. Electric vehicles. A private spaceflight. To Wall Street, these were career-ending ideas. To Musk, they were controlled experiments. Because now, the variable he was testing was not technology. It was agency. At SpaceX, Musk structured the company so that he was deeply embedded in engineering decisions. He retained overwhelming influence. A failure would be public, but ownership would remain intact. At Tesla, he entered not as a passive investor, but as a forceful operator, eventually becoming synonymous with the brand itself. This was not ego. This was Zip2 trauma, operationalized. Every philosophy sounds elegant, until it meets reality. In 2008, reality arrived violently. SpaceX had failed 3 launches in a row. One more failure, and the company was finished. Tesla was hemorrhaging cash. The financial crisis had frozen capital markets. Bankruptcy was weeks away. Musk himself was nearly out of money. Here is the moment that reveals everything Zip2 had taught him. He did not retreat. He doubled down. He personally funded payroll. He refused to surrender control in exchange for safety. He accepted the possibility of total ruin. Because this time, he was not afraid of losing status. He had already experienced the emotional low point, being removed from his own creation. Compared to that, financial annihilation was merely arithmetic. And then, improbably, both bets paid off. NASA awarded SpaceX a contract days before collapse. Tesla secured last-minute financing just before payroll failure. The empire survived. This is where most biographies stop. But the deeper mechanism is still invisible to most observers. Early failure does not just teach lessons. It reshapes incentives. After Zip2, Musk no longer optimized for approval, stability, consensus. He optimized for control, optionality, a long-term compounding. This is why Musk is comfortable making decisions that appear irrational in the short term, open-sourcing Tesla patents, a building rockets vertically integrated instead of outsourcing, a publicly embracing controversy. These behaviors are not impulsive. They are consistent with a founder who values structural leverage over reputation management. From 1995 to 2025, Musk's career can be divided into two eras. Before Zip2, a brilliant technologist learning how the system works. After Zip2, a systems architect designing companies to prevent personal displacement. Every major move follows this arc: a ownership concentration, a deep technical immersion, a willingness to endure public failure. This is why comparisons to traditional CEOs fail. Musk is not optimizing quarterly earnings. He is optimizing irreversibility. Here is the uncomfortable takeaway. Most people try to avoid failure at all costs. Musk experienced it early, when the stakes were small enough to survive, but large enough to scar. That scar became a strategic advantage. It taught him where power truly resides. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. But the story does not end with survival. Because the same fearlessness that built Musk's empire may also be the very thing that threatens it. And that raises a final question, one that will define how history remembers him. Every strength casts a shadow. The same psychological rewiring that made Elon Musk fearless also removed many of the natural brakes that constrain most leaders. After Zip2, Musk internalized a dangerous truth. If you survive the worst once, you stop believing the worst can happen again. This belief is empowering, but it is also corrosive. Because over time, it changes how you perceive limits. In Musk's case, it manifested in three ways. First, escalation of scale. Each new venture had to be bigger, harder, more consequential than the last. Cars were not enough. Rockets were not enough. He moved toward planetary systems, neural interfaces, global communication networks. Second, compression of timelines. Musk does not think in decades. He thinks in impossibly aggressive deadlines. This creates innovation, but it also creates burnout, conflict, and public volatility. Third, indifference to optics. Once reputation stops being a survival tool, it becomes expendable. This explains his comfort with controversy, market whiplash, and polarizing behavior. The Zip2 failure removed fear. But fear exists for a reason. Private companies allow founders to impose vision unilaterally. Public markets do not. As Musk's influence expanded, so did scrutiny. Tweets moved billions. Comments triggered regulatory action. Personal behavior began to bleed into corporate valuation. This is where the Zip2 lesson encounters a paradox. Musk optimized for control to avoid being displaced. But scale introduces new stakeholders, governments, retail investors, entire industries. At that level, control becomes probabilistic, not absolute. The irony is sharp. The very strategy that protected him early in his career now exposes him to forces even he cannot fully dominate. And yet, he continues. Because the operating system installed in the late 1990s does not contain a retreat function. History will debate Musk's personality, politics, and management style for decades. But when historians strip away the noise, one mechanism will remain undeniable. Early, survivable failure can permanently upgrade ambition. Zip2 did not make Musk wealthy. It made him dangerous, to incumbents, to conventions, and sometimes to himself. It taught him that systems matter more than intentions, that ownership is destiny, and that fear is optional once endured. Most people spend their lives protecting comfort. Musk sacrificed comfort early and used the scar tissue as armor. There is one last implication we must confront. The same mindset that creates outsized progress often rejects restraint. Society benefits enormously from individuals willing to risk everything. But it also bears the cost when those individuals stop believing in limits. This is the unresolved tension at the center of Musk's story. Was Zip2 the failure that made him great? Or was it the moment that convinced him the rules no longer applied? The answer is not binary. It is both. So here is the question I want you to sit with and answer in the comments. At what point does fearlessness stop being an advantage and start becoming a liability? Because the future is not shaped by those who never fail. It is shaped by those who fail early, and decide, consciously or not, that they will never feel that powerless again.